Hello and welcome to another episode of Being High with Dualistic Unity, sponsored by Kava Brands, the THC gummies of choice for better days and better nights, legally and discreetly delivered directly to your door anywhere in the US, unless you live in Idaho. Sorry, Idaho. Get Kava Gummies online at kavabrands.com/DU10. That's KAVVABRANDS.com/DU10. And definitely don't forget to use code DU10 for 10% off your order.
Today's episode is actually really interesting, or at least I found it really interesting. We were talking a lot about the endocannabinoid system, about the experience of runner's high or an exercise high. And I found it to be fascinating to really look at the connection and the fact that there is something built into us that really does facilitate this experience of just being present. And we can drown that out. And I know there was one thing that was said today that I want to explore in greater detail. And it was something along the lines of when the body isn't burning the calories, we start to think more as a way of burning calories with our mind. And so this was a great episode. I'm really looking forward to exploring this conversation in future episodes on the podcast itself.
Ooh, yeah, now you got me going. But this is a blast, and I'm excited to dig into that. But for this episode, a ton of fun. Tony is an awesome dude, understands a lot, has a really cool journey, and both personal and business wise that involves the cannabis space and the use in his own life. He is a wealth of knowledge, and this was a super fun chat. So I hope you enjoy.
And here we are for our 5th episode of Being High with Dualistic Unity. I love these episodes. They're always so much fun because we always start them off by smoking a big joint before the conversation, just to show and embody the general realization that you don't have to know you're going to be in control. You don't have to know what you're doing. You can just relax, trust yourself, have a conversation in good company, and you'll grow and you'll learn. And sure, you may have a few moments like, shit, did I say that right? Am I supposed to say that? Maybe I should have said more, but it'll pass. And in that passing, you'll realize it wasn't that big a deal. And that is the lesson. So today we are joined by Tony from OffField Athletic Cannabis. This is a fantastic company. I was checking out the website. I love the fact that you deal with drinks as well as gummies. And I was really wondering, where did that marriage come in? How did cannabis and drinks and running all come to be a part of OffField?
For sure. Well, first off, thank you guys for inviting me over. I did not get the message that I was supposed to be smoking a joint beforehand, but I do have one of our drinks, so I'll partake.
That is good news. We appreciate it. It's certainly not a prerequisite, but we appreciate the participation.
All about it. All about it. So OffField and running and our products all kind of came together when I personally was going through a transition in my life. My health was kind of not doing so well. I had a herniated disc in my back. My previous career, I was sitting in an office a lot on airplanes, and it was kind of the lamest excuse for having a herniated disc. It was nothing exciting about it. And I went to my partner at the time and told him I need to make some changes around the office. I can't just be doing this to myself. And he told me, that's very nice. We've been business partners for a number of years. He's like, and you haven't noticed the fact that I've gained a substantial amount of weight. I also like to take this health journey with you. So we'd had a similar conversation before and signed up for a gym and never showed up, and we're just paying dues around town, and decided to do it differently. We decided to have fun, do things that we did when we were younger and hadn't done in a while, and maybe even try new things that we hadn't tried before, make it social. So we did things like started playing tennis, going on runs together, signed up for a climbing gym, really exploring what we're capable of. And at the time, we started consulting for a cannabis company. We were also working with Nike at the time. In our previous career, we were in the marketing space, and we started combining the things that we were working on with our own personal goals. So we wanted to make it recreational. We wanted to make it fun. So we brought in cannabis into the mix, and people started enjoying the activities a little bit more. We were playing just as well as we were before, and we were recovering faster. And that's when I started reading a lot about the kind of intersection of exercise and cannabis. And what I discovered was pretty mind-blowing at the time, was that a research group out in Germany found a connection between the runner's high and the endocannabinoid system. So I had heard of the runner's high before, and just like everybody else, I'm like, it's endorphins, exercise just makes you feel good. What I didn't know is that actually no one knew how the runner's high worked. There was a clear understanding in lab settings that there was an effect that was going on, both in the body and in the mind. That was proven time and time again since the 60s, but never proven as to how. The incredible part is the legalization of cannabis research had uncovered that connection. So it's the endocannabinoid system that creates the effect of the runner's high. It provides anti-inflammatory benefits, the feeling of euphoria, improves stamina and endurance. And that is all done by an endocannabinoid called anandamide. When I first read this, it was research done in mice, but still enough for me to start researching it on my own and experimenting on myself to see what was possible. And I loved it. During the time of experimenting, the one thing that was a little bit off was, I don't really want to smoke before I go for a run just because of it heats up your lungs. And there's conclusive research on that's just not a good thing. The other option was eating candy or soda. And in California, where we're based, all the dispensaries were selling edibles, and they were lovely. But if you care about health or anything like that, you read the back of the package and it's just, high fructose corn syrup, and it's just not well-made candy, but it'll get you high. So I started reaching out to friends in the cannabis space and asking about these types of products. I'm like, is there something really geared towards the occasion of a pre-workout, something for athletes? And it was crickets. Half the people didn't know about the endocannabinoid system or even how cannabis worked. The other half were really just trying to make stronger vape pens. That was very big at the time. So my partner Todd and I decided to take it on our own and start experimenting. And we started sourcing ingredients. We brought in a chief scientific officer and really making blends that could work for us. We were very surprised about the results, and we became obsessed over it. In that duration, a number of things happened. One, our health improved significantly. Beyond just the weight loss, because that's become so insignificant in terms of the journey that we're on. It was the feeling that we got while exercising. It was something we looked forward to, and we can clearly tell that the rest of the things that were going on in our lives was improving. There was a certain energy that we didn't have before, and so we started making the products, and we got so obsessed with it. And our background being in marketing and branding and all that, we started on the side just seeing what could be possible. And that was when OffField was born. OffField is a term used in sports of the lifestyle and choices athletes make when they're not playing the game itself. So when they're training, what they're eating, all the decisions they're making. So we decided we're not professional athletes, but we are in our own way athletes. And when we're not at work, we're making certain decisions for our lives to improve when we are either at work or with our family and really at the highest level that we can perform. So we loved it. We got obsessed with it, and we started making it. To your previous question, a bit long-winded version of that was gummies and drinks were the first products to come out of the door. Drinks and CBD products that didn't have the THC molecule in it, because we wanted something that could be used all day, every day, for any athlete, for any occasion, and still have a lot of the same properties of the runner's high, without the psychoactive element of it. This was very useful for a lot of people, including ourselves, of if you're working out in the morning and you don't have the luxury of being a little lit before work, then we have some products for you. The THC side of the camp came in relatively recently, but in truth, it took us over 2 years to develop these drinks. So it came out of a process of, one, making sure we understand the runner's high. While developing this drink early on, this was about 3 years ago now, the same group out of Germany studying the runner's high and the endocannabinoid system did human trials. And now it is conclusive fact that it is the endocannabinoid system that triggers it. And we went through a process of iteration of how do we provide these same benefits to as many people as possible in the cleanest, healthiest format there is. And that's where we started with this. And now we're continuously experimenting what the next thing is. The gummies came out of a similar program that we call OffField Labs, where our customers ask for certain products. And we went through a process of iteration with them of creating something that they enjoyed, and we launched that as well. And we have a number of other products in R&D that will go through our Off-Field Labs as well as a THC gummy that is in development too.
Ooh, I'm excited to hear that. And I have tried those drinks, both of them, and I loved them. I took them before a couple runs, and they're spot on. I think my perfect dose is probably 5 to 10 milligrams THC before a run. Once I start getting into the 20s, it starts. It's like a little bit of my own fight, but things start getting a little heavier. The legs start feeling a little heavier. But how's it been with you guys? And I appreciate you sharing all of that. It's fascinating. The runner's high in equation to the endocannabinoid system is pretty mind-blowing for me, because I always thought similarly to you that it was just a mechanism, but really it's interconnected with this thing that cannabis is a part of, connected to. And so I'm curious, with you guys and the brand and everything, how much of it is education, and not only education and breaking down a stigma, but because you guys even go beyond that it's actually healthy and beneficial. And even for me, who doesn't buy into the stigma that it's unhealthy, to think that, oh, this is useful for exercise, for running, has been a little bit of a leap for myself. And so I'm curious just how much time you spend doing education versus every other part of the business.
A substantial amount. And really, we try to approach it in a way of, we were in the same position. We were on the other side of not really understanding what it's for, because I've enjoyed cannabis for my entire adult life. I came from the creative side, and like a lot of creatives, it was my special ingredient when I really needed to dial something up and really focus on something. I never had that stigma that it was like bad for you or made me lazy or anything like that. But I had an occasion for it where it was essentially in a box. It's perfect for me at this time, and I'm not really going to use it any other times. What I really discovered during this time, and a lot of the education we're trying to push out there, is that cannabis research has essentially been illegal for the majority of prohibition. And I was very naive about that. I knew that it was illegal to sell for a long time. I knew it was illegal to grow. I knew it was illegal to consume. I didn't know that it was illegal to actually study it. So when I found out that even psychedelics had more body of research of modern science on it than cannabis ever did, it was shocking to me. And today, still, it's so difficult for research groups in the United States to touch the stuff and really get the funding they need because of its Schedule 1 classification. So I was blown away that it wasn't touched. Now we're seeing a lot of international universities and research groups doing the research. So the stigma that we had before was based on rhetoric. It was based on policy. It was really something that you can experience on your own and make your own opinion on it. But there was really no one that knew anything about it. I learned when I was a little kid about cannabis from a police officer that would come into my classroom with the DARE program and tell me about the pros and cons of consuming cannabis. And I remember Officer Pinto. He was a very nice guy, but let me tell you, he was not a researcher. There was no time where he practiced any kind of medicine. He was a sweetheart, though. What I realized when I was an adult, it is a little strange that science teachers aren't teaching you about this stuff. It's a police officer that teaches you about this stuff. And now, as an adult, I'm like, it's not really that much of a coincidence. It's because that's where the information is coming from. Today, that's changing. We're getting a better understanding of what the endocannabinoid system is, and not a lot of people know that. The shocking part about it is, it's hard to even go to your doctor and ask them about this because they weren't taught this in med school. It wasn't on the curriculum. So it's really people that are taking significant interest in the category and diving into it that are getting a better understanding of its health benefits. Just like anything in the world, there can be overuse. There are definitely things and risks you can take that, aren't the right approach. But if we're constantly just focusing on the worst common denominator of it and not focusing on the incredible amount of benefits that you can get from it, it's such a waste. So we do a lot of understanding of our products aren't designed for a specific person. They're designed for an occasion. And the occasion that we want to inspire is for people to move more often. The one thing that everyone can agree on is that exercising more often is good for everyone. And even if you're doing it often, recovering faster is important for you. And if you're not doing it enough, fighting through that pain in the first few weeks, the first few months to get that ball rolling is usually what stops people from getting that ball rolling. And we want to provide the products that help people move more often. And the research that's coming out of it, all coming out in the last legitimately 3 to 4 years, is proving that the anecdotal stories that athletes have been talking about with their connection to cannabis are more than just anecdotal, that there is real substance behind it and real science behind it. And that's what we're trying to uncover. We try to do it in a friendly, funny way. Obviously, with social media, if you're too serious, you're going to get the counter of it and it's just going to become a mess. We try to bring a certain sense of humor, but we are always ready to have a deeper conversation about it because there's substance there that a lot of people don't know about it. And we don't try to, make them feel bad that they don't know about it. There's a reason they don't know about it. It's all new, even though it feels like it's been around for a while.
Well, because it's not really a scientific curve that's the problem. It's very much a cultural one. Like, it's not just the fact that cannabis hasn't been legal, it's the fact that it was straight up demonized. Like, people were vilified for using it, and to the point where people who, if they were even suspected of using it, would be shamed and judged and worry about their job, worry about how people in their community. I mean, I went through prohibition myself, and to this day I can walk down the street right now and get cannabis at a dispensary. It's a 10-minute walk. It's that convenient. And I still feel weird walking down the street smoking a joint without worrying about the judgment. And and I know the judgment is completely arbitrary. It's completely based on that person's insecurities, but it's so deeply entrenched, right? Absolutely. And so that's been, I think, a biggest part of this is the fact that it's obvious that there are benefits. It's just that in the same way that once upon a time, if you weren't Christian, if you weren't a religious person, you were immediately suspect. It's the same kind of curve we're on right now. It's changing though. And thanks to companies like yourself, where you're actually showing, look, like, you want to get healthy. We all want to get healthy. We've had other guests that were talking about the mental health side as well. There's obvious benefits here. It's worth looking into. And I think that's a reasonable request.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And there's value in it. I feel like a lot of what's going on in the world, we're starting to realize the inverse of synthetic drugs and pharmaceutical drugs and all of the benefits that we were told were going to happen while prohibition was happening on cannabis, we're seeing the counter effects of it now. And we have an entire population that's, you know, falling apart because of the really the bullshit that we were taught, and a lot of lies to make a lot of money. I think the biggest problem cannabis has had on that level, on a cultural level, is that it's so easy to grow. It's just too hard to trademark, to copyright, to pack into a little pill box and sell. And that part is the hardest part. We, even with our products, obviously, we want to sell, we want to grow, we want to be successful, all that good stuff. But if people can find another product that benefits them in the same way, by all means, we want to make sure that people have the opportunities to do it. And if it's not ours, that's fine too. We want to at least inspire people again to keep moving and really enjoy it as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think that even just the normalization has impacts beyond anything we can imagine, because there is that deeper stigma. Like it's wild that we still maintain, despite research coming out. It's like that runs really deep, and there was, you know, a component of upbringing, and there was always, for me at least, like this stigma that it made you lazy. Like that was the argument that I got from people as to why it's illegal. Like that was the only thing I was ever told, was it makes people lazy. And I would kind of scratch my head and be like, well, why is that illegal? Like that seems like a funny thing to make illegal. Even if it was the case, if it was, like, what would be the issue with that? And like, well, we need people to work, we need to keep the thing moving. And so there's such a depth to that mentality that we think it would be reasonable to make something illegal that makes us lazy. But that is incredibly unfounded as well, like that idea. And so I'm curious if you're familiar just with that in talking about, you know, using it for exercise, for energy. Actually, if you see people like coming to you like, I thought this made you lazy, and even where that comes from initially.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there was, on a societal level, a previous understanding that you're a type of person if you smoke cannabis, and that means you're going to be unproductive. You're not going to fit in to the, you know, the corporate structure, or fall in line with what everybody else is doing, and maybe have some ideas that are outside of the norm. I think that is just something that people were always afraid of, and that stigma seems to be fading away, hopefully faster. Because in truth, when you start interacting with people that use cannabis, you start realizing that they're of all walks of life and all levels. And one of the things that we sometimes joke around about, but it's true, is it's not really cannabis that makes people lazy. Some people are lazy. And I know people that don't touch the stuff and they're lazy. And that's just something that other people want to be a little bit more proactive and active and moving and doing whatever it is, and are more ambitious. And cannabis might fit there and might not. There are use cases for cannabis as well. Sometimes you want to relax yourself in order to have a better night's sleep. Is that considered lazy? I don't think so, because hopefully you're using that sleep to be more productive the next day, whatever it might be. The other side of our business is we found that CBD is an incredible cannabinoid. And when I first started looking into it, without saying, you know what, I'm going to be making CBD products, this is when I was just a consumer of products. I thought CBD was a bunch of nonsense, because there was a minute where, you know, you can get shampoo with CBD in it. You can get bed sheets that had CBD in it. I'm still not sure how they put it in there, but it was there. And everything had CBD in it. What I didn't realize is that there are different types of CBD. There are isolates, there's broad spectrum, there's full spectrum. All of those have different effects. There are, the amount that you're consuming is different, how you're consuming it, how it's made. All of these things take into account the effects of it. So we found that orally ingested CBD is the most effective for what we're looking for. If you want anti-inflammatory properties that are within your entire body, that's the best way of going about it. If you have specific pain point, an ointment is better. And the reason for that is the endocannabinoid system really goes from the brain all the way down to the toes. And you have spots on your knee where the receptors can take that. But if you want it inside of you, orally is the best way to do it. The kind of research that's coming out of that on the CBD side as well is that higher dose amounts of CBD can improve things like VO2 max, can improve endurance. It has allowed people to really run faster with less pain and longer with less pain. This was conducted out of Australia not too long ago. I think this research came out about 6 months ago. And that was a huge thing of like CBD has shown to improve endurance. That was huge for us. I was like, yes, it can. Let's do this, guys. But what a lot of people at the time and why CBD was so popular was it was a sleep aid. It was like, this stuff should make you sleepy. While in truth, unlike melatonin, which can induce sleep, CBD really just calms you down. And feeling calm is really good right before you're going to bed if you're trying to go to sleep. But feeling calm right before you're about to go for a run is also really good, because essentially when you're running and sorry about that, I'm talking about running a lot with the runner's high, but in truth it's called an exercise high. It's for any kind of real sport that you're doing. So if you're riding a bike or weightlifting or anything like that, it's good for you. That feeling of calm is your body regulating its caloric intake between your brain and your body and the rest of your muscles. Your brain isn't your biggest muscle. For some, it's definitely not their biggest muscle, but it consumes way more calories than any other muscle in its size. So kind of for its ratio, if you are overthinking, that is a cue that you are burning calories in your brain and not in your body. So what you want to be doing is really focusing on just moving forward. One of the examples that I use of people that can hit the runner's high naturally, or a lot of people even call the runner's high the second wind, which people, I think, a lot have this misconception of the runner's high as like you're about to have this euphoric out of body experience that is absolutely insane. And some people are like, I've never felt it. For some, it's a lot more subtle than that, and that's okay. For myself and for a lot of people, when you're running a long distance, there's this moment where you just forgot. You just blacked out for a few miles. You feel great. And you're like, I don't even remember the last few miles. I was feeling like shit the first few miles. And now I've just put in some good time and all this. That is the effect of your mind being calm and your body really getting the benefits of that feeling and that motion. So you're making the most out of it. And it doesn't mean you got to be constantly thinking about it. It's the exact opposite. So it doesn't make you lazy.
And Tony, you actually have some firsthand experience with this. You ran a marathon. Is that correct?
I did. So it's a bit of a funny story, not funny story. When I was younger, in middle school and high school, I was on the swim team, loved swimming, and always proud to have, out of my group of friends, always the fastest swimmer to this day. I'll still challenge them. But I hadn't done it in a while. And like I said, we were trying to do things that we were doing when we were younger. And I started swimming, and I decided to sign up for a triathlon just to test our first batch of products. I had never done a triathlon before. And I'm like, I know how to ride a bike. That should be fine. I was a little naive, but that was okay. I know how to ride a bike. I don't like running at all. So but you know, I can run. It's fine. It's not that long in my head. I was telling myself that, but I'm like, the swimming is the hardest part. I was talking to other triathletes, and they're like, the swimming's the hardest part, hardest part, hardest part. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna start swimming again, and I loved it. I was back in the pool doing laps and feeling great. And the day of the triathlon, I had my family and friends and other people there ready to root for me, and I was so stoked. It was in Palm Springs, and it started getting windy, like crazy windy out of nowhere. And they went on the loudspeaker and said, "Hey, we gotta cancel the swim portion. We're just gonna tack on more running, and we're still gonna do this, but you just need to run more." And I'm standing there in my wetsuit being like, fuck, I didn't run at all during this time. I was just swimming and biking a little bit. So I did it. I finished it. The run was miserable. And when I got off of that, I'm like, I'm going to start focusing on running. Um, Shortly after COVID hit, so it gave me a lot of free time to run during the quarantine. So like a lot of people, I started really experimenting what I was capable of without having to go to a gym or anything like that. And that's kind of when I started falling in love with running, specifically outdoors. I started reading a lot more books. One of the things that I love about what we're doing, and I love about a lot of our customers, is that we sell books on our site, and they sell out way faster than we ever expect them to. And some of these books are the books that inspired us to really start doing it. Um, One book that I loved was What I Talk About When I Talk About Running, by an author that I loved, Murakami. He was a fiction author, and I've read a lot of his stuff, and I was like shocked to see that the only nonfiction work that he is doing is about running. And being in the creative field myself, I was interested in what he had to say. I loved it. It is not only just well written, it was very inspiring. And then Born to Run, which is incredibly popular, and reading about the Terra Mujer and the science behind our bodies and what we're capable of, and such a beautiful written book. And that inspired me as well.
What,
And
Tony,
I
real quick,
got
what is the Terra Mujera?
the
Is that
Terra
a
Mujer is a
location
tribe.
or a body
No,
part?
the
Oh,
book Born
tribe.
to
Okay.
Run documents is kind of a look into the Terra Mujer. So they're a tribe based in Mexico. They were considered the best long distance runners in the world, but they lived in isolation. They were native to Mexico and essentially fled the Spaniards, and were lived in this very brutal climate, but we're still incredible runners. So it talks about how these athletes that don't have, you know, the dope new $300 Nikes and aren't doing anything, they just have this joy and passion for running, and it's a part of their culture, and that's what makes them the best endurance runners in the world. And they do it because they love it, not because of any other reason. Great book, definitely recommend it. We have it on our site if you want it. So a lot of that was interesting, and I started running more, and I got into it, and then I signed up for a marathon. It got canceled because of COVID. I signed up for the next LA marathon. I couldn't do it because I got COVID. And then finally, I signed up for the marathon again. And this is when we had our drink in OffField Labs, when we had athletes all over the country testing our product to see what it is while we were developing this. And I said, if we're going to be testing this, I'm the number one guinea pig for OffField products. I'm like, let's see how it does in my first marathon. So I got to run it. I had a can and gummies ready to go. I did it with my brother. Very proud of him for done it together the whole way. And it was amazing. It was one of the best experiences of my life. One of the things that was a benefit of the products that we're making, is I only trained with OffField products to see what they're capable of. It was my only nutrition. It was the only thing that was kind of fueling me along the way. And I finished it and I had a great time. It was a lot of fun. Challenging for sure, but a lot of fun.
I'm curious then, what's your go-to off-field stack in terms of running? Do you have a difference for a shorter or longer distance, or what's typically your go-to there? Let me take a second to tell you about a brand that is making waves in the cannabis world right now, Batch CBD. Batch is a hemp-based brand that offers premium CBD and THC products that legally ship directly to your doorstep. But here's why they're getting so much attention. From the moment the hemp seeds are planted to the moment the product arrives at your doorstep, Batch keeps full control of the entire supply chain. Go check out Batch at hellobatch.com/DU25 for 25% off your first order. That's hellobatch.com/DU25 for 25% off your first order.
Definitely. So it depends if I'm looking for that psychoactive feeling. I drink this about 3 times a week, usually longer distances. So 5+. Sundays are my long runs. So I'll do like 10+. But sprints and things like that, I'm taking the gummies for sure. So I'll have a drink before I go out, and then 2 gummies every about 3 miles. It's always my thing for sprinting and all that. I'm usually, depending on how I feel. If I feel light, I'll have a drink. If I'm feeling a little heavy, I'll just have gummies.
And those are the CBD
Yes.
gummies
Yeah.
there? Okay. Yeah, I've tried those. What's the flavor of those again? They're
There's
really
matcha melon and yerba berry. So the yerba berry has yerba mate and elderberry as it, and why we used non-synthetic caffeine, which most products do have synthetic caffeine. We went for a natural source. One has yerba mate, the other has matcha. It's just way less jittery. And just gives you a cool, clean feeling for it. I also like the flavor. And it has a higher dose of CBD and CBG in it. So that helps with the endurance aspect of it. So the gummies are amazing for that, as well as the small amount of caffeine.
And your CBD and THC is hemp derived, correct? Does that mean that you can ship anywhere in the United States?
Yes, this was huge for us. So one of the things when it comes to cannabis, as a consumer of, joints and things like that, definitely go cannabis derived for that. The different terpenes and everything that goes into weed is incredibly important, and the entourage effect and all that is incredibly important. For what we were trying to achieve in our formula, our first iterations were cannabis derived THC, but we were isolating the molecule. So we had to isolate the molecule because our goal was to mimic the effect over and over and over again for as many people as possible. So in order to really be able to control the results, we had to isolate the cannabinoids and reintroduce them to one another. We were doing that with cannabis-derived THC for a while. The biggest challenge for us was there weren't enough people that were creating high-quality products in California. So it was incredibly challenging to be like, do not put junk in the product. And they're like, maybe a little junk. Let's do a little junk. Like, no, this is really meant to be healthy. So that was challenging. But then when the new laws passed in Minnesota and now in the country, thanks to them, we started looking into hemp-derived THC and found that on a molecular level, it's the same effect. So we started experimenting with that and getting the same exact results. People could not, one, tell the difference when we were doing kind of blind tests with groups. And then ultimately, when we introduced the new ones, people seem to love it. The benefit of it is really for hemp derived is when you have to isolate it. So drinks are becoming incredibly popular because of the fact that you're allowed to hit that minimum. How the laws are written, which are constantly confusing and always changing ever so slightly. is anything that is 0.3% THC per volume or less is federally legal. So because we have liquid, which makes the majority of the volume, we're able to get into that space. It was incredibly fortunate for our business, but even more fortunate that we can get this into more hands for more people to find the benefits for themselves than ever before. They don't have to look for something that's a little bit shady or something that is just of lower quality. They can get the best product possible and delivered straight to their door and not worry about the legality of it anymore.
Yeah, and you guys have quite a few, because it's not just, even in the drinks, it's not just THC. There's a number of really beneficial ingredients, and I know there's a number of things in there. Like I love reading the label and I'm like, oh, there's this, oh, there's that. Oh, I wonder what this is. I'm gonna Google that. And so I'm curious, coming to that conclusion with that formula. I'm sure there was a lot of test runs. I know from a previous discussion that you were oftentimes the guinea pig for coming to that ultimate point, but I know it's more than just the THC that's in there, as you expressed a little bit. And I'd love to hear a little more about what went into it and what is in it as well.
Yes, for sure. So we kind of have two things going on, and we want to meet in the middle. We want to really mimic the effects of the natural runner's high, which means we need something that can complement the effects of anandamide, which is the endocannabinoid that creates that effect. But your body's chemistry, no matter what, there's never just one thing going on. So it's not just anandamide. There's still endorphins. There's still things that are happening that create that effect, but the majority of it is anandamide. So THC is the closest to anandamide that we know of. The other side of it is you're consuming something during exercise, and that's important, right? You can't just take whatever you want. It's like if you could just eat anything in the middle of a run, I would probably have like a meatball sub, but that's not going to do it for me. I need things that really boost and fuel what I'm doing. So finding the other ingredients for the occasion itself, and then seeing how they work in unison, right? So how do we combine the products that can mimic the effects of the runner's high with products that are beneficial to the occasion itself? And we went through a number of iterations to it. So our drink specifically has one ingredient that I've loved for a while, which is L-theanine. It's a T-derived adaptogen that essentially lowers cortisol. So that's, again, back on the mental side of it, of lowering stress, lowering that feeling of anxiety in order for your body to get as much of your energy as possible, as well as things that are pretty straightforward, like having B vitamins to give you a little boost of energy, and as much electrolytes as possible. We use organic cane sugar, and sugar has kind of become the devil, which I'm kind of in that space of too much sugar is bad for you, but you can't forget the too much in that sentence. So a lot of people realize it's either zero or, I'm just going to be pounding sugary sodas all day. I feel like there has to be kind of this middle ground. The alternative to using cane sugar was just worse for us, because the alternative is using a high intensity sweetener like stevia or monk fruit, where in doses there's no functional benefit. It's just a flavor thing. With sugar, there is a benefit to hydration. So it helps with osmosis and gets the electrolytes into your tissue. You could do the same thing with salt, but the problem is if you're just doing salt, your drink is going to taste like salt. There's a lot of products on the market that are awesome that focus on that aspect of it, but they put high intensity sweeteners in it in order to complement that flavor. There's no functional benefit, again, to those. They kind of just pass through your body, but with sugar there is, and we think for the occasion it's the best thing possible. We also include other cannabinoids, CBD and CBG, CBG we started using from the very get-go. It was introduced to us when we were first starting out, and we were very curious about its effects. There's more research that needs to come out of it, but really in anecdotal experiences, we felt the difference with and without it. And really, it essentially amplifies all the current cannabinoids in it by allowing that benefit of inflammation to be higher, speeding up recovery even faster. And it's recognized as the mother of all cannabinoids, because all cannabinoids start as CBG and then evolve to their final product. But that's kind of the layout of it.
That's incredible. And so when did OffField come into being?
A little bit over 2 years ago now.
So this has been a sizable part of your life. Out of curiosity, because the industry is what it is and the stigma is what it is, how would you say that you have changed? How have you grown as a person, as your perspective of the world over the last 2 years in taking care of OffField and seeing it grow?
For sure. One, I realized how naive I was going into it, because I thought, I was fortunate to have a successful business prior to this and found success in my industry before. So I thought we would just knock it out of the park. What I've realized is that when you start something new, especially a small business, no one really cares. And you're in it. It's the most important thing to you. You obsess over it. It's your baby, and you're like, if I care about it so much, everyone else will too. That's not the case. You really need to fight for it all the time, and that's been it. The part that I'm absolutely thankful for is being the guinea pig for these products. I'm hands down in the best shape I've ever been in my life, and always eager to, go do something adventurous because I have the energy and the fitness level to do it. Just being able to do something that normally you couldn't do is very, I don't know, inspiring to just, I could do something crazy if I want to. For an example of that, I've been bragging to my friends about it, was a couple weeks ago. My wife and I took our son to Yosemite, and she knew how bad I wanted to climb Half Dome, do the hike part, not the solo climbing part, but do the hike. But I could never get a permit or anything like that. I was always in the lottery, never got it. So she's like, why don't you just go up there and ask them nicely if they can go up. It was my birthday that day. So she's like, just go do it and see if you could do it. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take you up on that. I'm going to go. I was clearly not looking at the numbers correctly, because when I first read it, I'm like, oh, it's 8 miles back there and back. No big deal. I'll make it back quickly. I think about a mile in, I realized, wait a second, it's not 8 miles there and back. It's 8 miles there, 8 miles back. And you got to do the climb up the cables at the top. So I was fortunate I started really moving. I was like, I promised them I'd be back at a certain time. I quickly was told it takes about 8 hours to go there and back with no stops. And I started really moving my ass up there. And I got to the top. It was incredible. There was no one up there. This was right before we were threatened that Hurricane Hillary was going to come in. So no one was doing that climb. I saw that the weather was nice, so I just did it anyways. And it was stunning. There were only 3 other people up there with me, and I loved it. And I ran back down. I made it up and down in about 6 hours. And when I was done, to that point I was like, I didn't train for this. My pedometer said I did 20 miles in total from like getting to the car to the trail to the top and back. And I'm like, the fact that I could just do it because I felt like it, was very kind of a bit overwhelming. I was a little emotional about it because honestly, when we were starting this whole thing out, I'm like, I'd be lucky if I got out of the parking lot without, throwing out my back accidentally. So that was a big feeling of joy, personal joy, because having your health, which a lot of people talk about but don't really understand until you get a little older, is so incredibly important. It's like you want to hold on to it, and the best way of holding on to your health is you got to put in work. It's not easy. The harder you make it, the better you'll be. Um, the only difference is we make products that make you enjoy the hard stuff. So that part was great, and being able to test it out. So that journey has been great. And then being completely naive about the cannabis industry and really what it takes, was also, I'm like, I'm going to come in with good ideas and people are going to hear about it and they're going to want to do it. And turns out most of it is they don't want to hear good ideas. Everyone just wants to make as much money as possible by cutting as many corners as possible. And on the policy making side of it is just infuriating. It's just the industry is hard to say the least, because what product you have, how you want to present it to people, and they want to categorize it as something that is archaic, and treat it that way. So that's been a challenge for sure, but an exciting one.
Oh, I can only imagine. And the beauty in that. And I think the mentality and cannabis and the willingness to take things a little bit more lightly, take yourself a little bit less seriously, like that plays into the stories we tell ourselves. And it sounded like climbing that mountain was just didn't tell yourself anything. It was like, let's see what I could do, and then didn't tell yourself anything along the way about what you could or couldn't do. And I think there's a point, and I've definitely experienced it before, as you were explaining and talking about the runner's high, where I'm lucky because it kind of times up sometimes for me, where if I'll take a gummy or have a off-field drink and something around 5-10 milligrams, it hits like 40, 45, 50 minutes in. And usually that's around the time that it's if it's a longer run, I'll start. It basically for me is like it is sort of a euphoric feeling, but it's also just there aren't so many thoughts going on. There isn't so much, especially about the run, like, oh, this sucks, or oh, this hurts, or this blah blah blah. And it's not that anything necessarily gets better, but they kind of do once I stop bitching and moaning
Yeah.
about shit. And so much of, and that plays to anything in life, right? The more we tell ourselves a story about what's going on or about what's happening, it kind of just makes it tougher. And there's a beauty in that, in the freedom, and obviously to be in good enough shape to do a climb like that, but also just show up as yourself. Like how symbolic of reality in life is that? Like the freedom to show up as yourself and just be you as you go. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I've found that a lot of the time, how I now approach it on my daily exercise, it's like, it's not about hitting a personal best or anything like that. It's really trying to achieve just a moment of clarity. It's kind of mindful movement, or, meditative movement, things like that. I am trying to check out, and it's hard for me to do it. I got a lot going on in life, just like everybody else. And the little reprieve that I get is in that, let's focus on my body. And in order to do that, you really got to switch off your brain for a little bit. And that is the best way of going about it. And for a lot of people, some of the people that are most intense, especially on social media, are the ones that don't like cannabis, but are also incredible runners. So the ones that can achieve that runner's high by doing their 20-mile run and being like, you don't need to take anything. I'm like, you didn't meet me a few years ago. I needed to take something. Okay. I couldn't do that. That is impossible. That is so unachievable. And what I want to inspire people to do is, like, if you're getting off the couch and you feel like shit and you just need to start doing, this is something that can, put a smile on your face and let you not think about, hey, what's everyone thinking about what I look like? What are they're worried that I'm the most out of shape in this gym, or I shouldn't be walking around my neighborhood like this, or I just want to be left alone. Is like, who gives a shit about all that? All you need to focus on is enjoying this moment, because they pass by very quickly. So having that time to just focus on it, and whether you need to talk to yourself about all the things that you have that day to go on and all, that's fine. But the less of that and the less noise you have, you'll notice that that time goes by really quickly. For a lot of people that struggle, and I was in the same place for a long time when I hated running, was, a mile felt like, this is taking an hour, even though it's, 10 minutes. You're like, an hour just went by. This is miserable. I don't want to do this anymore. What you realize when you get to a certain point is, when an hour goes by, you're like, that was only 10 minutes, but an hour just went by and you ran 10 miles instead. So that switch is in all of us. Is like, how do more people discover it and enjoy it?
Absolutely. And it seems like you guys are doing a fantastic job of kind of bridging that gap and putting out some life vests and some flotation devices to people who see no way out of their stuff. It's like it's not going to do it for you. You still got to get up and do it, but this is going to make that step just a little bit easier. And so I know we got to wrap up soon, but I'm curious. You mentioned earlier a THC gummy and potential. Do you guys have any other exciting products that may or may not be in the works?
I have one that's been in the works for legitimately 4 years, but it's currently under wraps. The FDA needs to change a couple of rules which don't allow for it, but it is one of the bigger innovations that we've had in the category for sure. Other products that we're doing is like I said, marrying the right combination of cannabinoids with the right ingredients. So we never look at it of, to your point, Andrew, 5 to 10 milligrams is what you need. We don't see it that way. That's not all you need. So what are the other things in there that can really amplify that experience so you can have the best experience possible? Right now, what we found is that this drink with its dose is ideal for about 70% of people. So tolerance levels are very confusing when it comes to cannabis. And that's because some people's endocannabinoid system is just less receptive to cannabinoids than others. They naturally have a higher tolerance. The other side of it for some people is like, if you metabolize things really slowly, or you ate a big meal, it might take a little bit longer as well. So all those things aside, really on the natural side, we found this is perfect for about 70% of people. 15% want much higher dose, so like 20 milligrams plus. And for me, that's like, oh, I'm going to be stoned for like a day and a half if I take that much. So that seems excessive. But in reality, putting yourself in their shoes, that's just 5 for them. It's the same thing that it is for me. So they're not getting baked. They're not trying to get more baked. That's just how their endocannabinoid system works. The other side wants less. So they're in the 1 to 2 milligram camp, and that's like their peak. So we want to offer products for the other 30% as well. So that's in development too, and how you put it together in the right way, in the safest way possible. One of the biggest things that I would hate for people to do, and I wrote about it while training for the marathon, is accidentally taking too much will definitely make it a different experience. So when I was training for the marathon, I had a beaker, I had little droppers, and I would get samples from other labs with different amounts of cannabinoids in it, and I'd have to measure out the emulsions myself. And each time it was a little different. And one time I put in my 5 milligrams of drops and I drank it. And then immediately after drinking it, I'm like, I did the math wrong. I took 50 milligrams instead. Fortunately, this was before my Sunday long run, and I went to my wife and I'm like, so I took 50 instead of 5. She's like, what does that mean? And I told her, I'll be honest with you, I have no idea. I've never taken this much before. And I went for the run. And then about 4 miles into it, I maybe this is just for me on my runs when I know it clicks in. I have an appreciation for trees, like just this feeling of like these trees are so beautiful. Wherever I'm running, I just start noticing them, and that's when it clicks to me. I'm like, I'm starting to feel the effects. So as soon as I start really focusing on the trees, and then from that moment, I just got gradually more and more and more lit. And then when I got home, she's like, how was the run? I think I ran like 18 miles. How was the run? I'm like, the run was great, but I'm like, I felt high, but I'll be honest with you, I'm more high now than I was at any point in the run. And then, yeah, I woke up the next day completely stoned, like super Monday morning, ready for work, high out of my mind. So long story short, we don't want to do that to people accidentally. We're trying to make sure that the form factors are so clear that you're not going to just, you wanted a 5 milligram and you took a 20 by accident. We're not going to do that to people. So that's a part of it. And how do we package it? How do we make it safe and effective as well? So
That's awesome, dude. I resonate a lot, and I appreciate fucking everything you're doing, getting the word out there. Like it's changing, and it's changing with everything that's going into, just being willing to make it a little more normalized, talk about it a little bit more, just have it involved in conversations where there isn't this, tensity and stress when the word comes up. It's like
yeah.
just being able to do that is a
And I'll
beautiful
be honest,
thing.
I personally like, I need to talk about it because I'm incentivized to talk about it. I have this company that I need to like get people to know about it. But though one thing I love is when other people are doing it and sharing it. The one other little anecdote about starting OffField is when I started calling people to ask them about it. I they were telling me like, your weed before working out, who's going to do that? And I'm like, well, there's research about it, all this. Have you ever tried it? They're like, well, yeah, I always do it before I work out, but who else would? And this was one call after another. So everybody was already doing it, but people do it in the shadows. They don't share it with the world. This is something it's their little secret moment that they're having. So one of the things that I love is when people are putting it out there on social media and not worrying about it. And the reason why I met you guys was because Andrew has been incredible about the content. I got to meet Andrew just because so many of our customers were tagging us in his videos of doing the gummy runs. And one day I was talking with Todd and he's like, have you seen this guy Andrew and the gummy runs? And I'm like, how have you seen it? I'm like, we're getting tagged a million times. He's like, someone just emailed it to me. We're getting posts about it. This is all over the place. So like, love it. It's amazing. And it's sharing it with people, and it's a different, everyone's going to have a different experience. But what I know for a fact, for those that haven't had the experience themselves, it's going to be different than what they expect it to be, because it's much more approachable than what we're led to believe, and we can have a good time doing it. And watching Andrew training and experimenting on yourselves, it reminds me of a younger me. I'm just not as charismatic on TikTok as you are. So you're crushing it, and yeah, thank you for finding us and finding each other through this process and sharing your experience.
It's interesting how you never know what you're doing is going to play out. You never know. You just don't know. I know Andrew has gone through a whole process with those gummy videos going, I don't know if this is the right thing to do. I'm doing it anyway. And it just happened to bring you into this conversation. And I'm encouraged by, again, the accessibility. I love the idea of just two people standing together, having a conversation. Somebody breaks out one of your drinks. And then there's a conversation about that drink, and it's that easy now for that bridge to be built. And that I'm very encouraged by that. Tony, this has been a lot of fun. We really appreciate you being here. Everyone, thank you for joining us. We will see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Andrew.